Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. Governor Gavin Newsom and Governor Ron DeSantis have traded swipes in the media for some time, but a new escalation this week. And let's start with Gavin Newsom speaking in an interview with Fox News' Sean Hannity.
You would do a 2-hour debate with Ron DeSantis.
I make it 3.
3-hour debate with
Yeah, make
so
it.
I hear 4.
And do it with 1 day notice with no notes. I look forward to that. We can talk about his zest for demonization. We could talk about his assault on
and
free
you get to
enterprise.
call him a kidnapper?
I said question mark. Still being investigated.
The question mark was
still
really
being investigated. Still being investigated.
And you may bring charges. The people you know.
What kind of faith tradition?
How nice was it
says
of him
you
to
should
send
treat
them to a
people
state
like this? So Ron DeSantis did the goodness of his heart. He's going around the country to try to help migrants and bring them to states because he knows a
question about that.
Why is it that?
And here responding in a news conference is Governor Ron DeSantis.
He has a real serious fixation on the state of Florida. I mean, I think it's just bizarre that he does that. But what I would tell him is, you know what? Stop pussyfooting around. Are you gonna throw your hat in the ring and challenge Joe? Are you gonna get in and do it, or are you just gonna sit on the sidelines and chirp? So why don't you throw your hat in the ring, and then we'll go ahead and talk about what's happening.
Alicia, let's start with Gavin Newsom. You've watched him for some time. What is he up to here? I mean, he is not a 2024 presidential candidate at this point. So why is he out there joining these attacks on Republicans from halfway across the country?
Well, I think he's laying the ground for a presidential run. I think that he's hoping, and I think some other Democrats are also hoping and perhaps anticipating that Biden will bow out because of perhaps either cognitive or physical issues. And this could be a wide open race. And so I think what he's been doing, he went on a Southern tour last month and visited many Southern states to try to kind of spread his progressive gospel on a lot of cultural issues. I think he's trying to expand his name recognition and probably also energize progressives around his candidacy and taking on Ron DeSantis, who's really become a target on the left. I think that's one way he's seeking to do that. And of course, DeSantis became kind of a punching bag among progressives during the lockdowns when he eased, and he was one of the first governors to actually lift the lockdowns. And so I think that this actually, to some extent, plays well both for DeSantis and Newsom. I think they both benefit politically by taking on each other, because I think conservatives also like to beat up on Governor Gavin Newsom, and I'm sure they've actually got plenty of fodder for doing so.
What about DeSantis' position here, though, Kim? Notably, he did not directly respond to the challenge from Gavin Newsom to have a 2 or 3 hour debate between these two ambitious young governors. Does he have more to lose since he is, in fact, an announced 2024 presidential candidate? And should that dissuade him? Or would this be an interesting debate for the country between these two models of governance, a red state and a blue state?
Sure, he has more to lose. When you're out there running for president, one of the first jobs is to make sure you don't engage in unforced errors. And so to the extent that you would sign up to go on a national stage and have a debate that there's no reason that you have to have, then yeah, that is a risk for him. That being said, I am of the belief that this could hold some real upsides for him. I have zero doubt that such a debate would be highly watched. Right now, in what is otherwise a very crowded field, this would be a way for DeSantis to get a lot of attention. The other thing I'd point out is that, it would give him a chance to talk a lot more than he's likely to get in what is that very crowded debate field and the first debate that's going to come in August. We've seen this before when you've got a dozen people up on the stage, everybody's fighting to have their own 30 seconds. Standing there for 2 hours going back and forth with Newsom would really be quite the platform for him to make the case. Also, he's got a great story to tell. And in my mind, it cleans Gavin Newsom's clock hands down. If you want to talk about which states are getting more people moving there, which states got surpluses, which state have got better rules, what states got legislators that's actually getting stuff done. That's an amazing Florida story. So myself, if I were DeSantis, I'd think hard about doing it, especially, the guy's pretty good on his feet. We haven't seen him actually in debate mode, but I'd be willing to bet he'd be pretty capable at it.
And speaking of California, one thing that Governor DeSantis would surely go after is the homeless problem, the crime problem, and some news there, Alicia. This week, Westfield said it was giving up, this is reading from the San Francisco Chronicle, its namesake mall, the city's biggest shopping center, back to its lender because of falling foot traffic, although there's some reporting also that crime was playing a factor. Nordstrom, which was an anchor tenant there, was closing in August when its lease expired. And similarly, the owner of the largest hotel in San Francisco is walking away from it, giving it back to the lender. Alicia, what is going on in San Francisco? It seems like we're in a spiral because voters recalled the progressive prosecutor Chesa Boudin recently, but still we have low rents. We have foot traffic down. I saw a figure that tourism revenue in the city compared with before the pandemic is down still by about a quarter. And it seems to me that once you get into this circling the drain, it is harder to arrest than maybe some outsiders and even critics would like to think, because these trends feed off one another.
Well, I don't know if I'd still, remarkably, San Francisco still has among the highest rents in the country. And that's probably part of the problem in terms of that contributed to the exodus during the COVID lockdowns. But, San Francisco has always been a grungy city, like go back to actually when Newsom was mayor 2 decades ago. And it had a huge homeless problem then. And if you recall, Newsom promised to clean up the streets to increase housing for homelessness. And there was actually tax increases passed to do that. And it really hasn't improved at all. In fact, it's gotten a lot worse. And that's part of the problem you alluded to, is the progressive policing and the lack of prosecution of criminals for allegedly low-level offenses, including shoplifting. And I would also point out that Newsom also contributed in his capacity as lieutenant governor by campaigning pretty hard for this state ballot initiative in 2014 that reduced many felonies to misdemeanors, and that includes shoplifting for up to $950 worth of goods. And again, this applied statewide. But that's why you've really seen rampant shoplifting, and drug use has also basically decriminalized a lot of drug use, not just pot, which was later legalized in the state. And so that has been feeding into San Francisco's problems. And you also have to go back to the lockdowns, and what happened early on was they basically reduced their jail population by 40% by letting out a lot of inmates, ostensibly to reduce the spread of COVID. But actually, there has been data that has come out that the inmates who were released were much more likely to die of overdoses on the streets than they were of COVID in the jail cells. And this leads into the problem with the hotels and offices, where you're starting to see, a lot of commercial real estate around the country has been having problems just because of the rising interest rates. But it's even more acute in San Francisco because office occupancy and hotel occupancy has really plunged since the pandemic. And it's recovered mostly in most cities, actually. But in San Francisco, it hasn't. And that's because businesses haven't returned and business people aren't coming. Tourists aren't coming. The hotels, actually, the city used them to put up a lot of homeless people during the pandemic. And they completely trashed a lot of these hotels, causing tens of millions of dollars in damages. It's so bad that a lot of homeless people now won't even stay in the hotels, be put up in the hotels, courtesy of the city, because there's mold, there's all kinds of damage. The plumbing doesn't work because of issues that were caused by other vagrants staying in these rooms. You actually had a lot of overdose deaths in these hotels. So there's actually, in addition to the lower hotel fares because of the reduced tourism to the city, you also have actually just had a lot of damage done to these hotels by homeless people that the city paid to put up because they were trying to quarantine them during lockdowns. The city's a huge mess. And to your point about a death spiral, I don't really want to call it death spiral, but you're right that how do you fix the city? And I think the underlying problem is that the politicians don't really want to admit if they have a problem, or their own policies are, driving it.
Thank you, Alicia and Kim. Thank you all for listening. You can email us at pwpodcast@wsj.com. If you like the show, please hit that subscribe button, and we'll be back next week with another edition of Potomac Watch.